Welcome to the first episode of The Roaming Perspective. I'm out here walking, thinking, and sharing the stories that shape how we see the world. Every step is a new angle, every moment a chance to learn something real. Now, let's get into it. I am a mid 20s guy living in Denver, Colorado, and I'm going to be sharing some experiences every time that we talk. Today, we're walking around the city I call home. You will see glimpses of the iconic 16th Street, home of the Rockies, Coors Field, and the historic Union Station. When I first got the opportunity to move out to Denver, I was still working for the same company in Pennsylvania. I was ecstatic. A couple of my college friends had already made the jump out west, and I felt like this was my chance to finally join them. The only real hurdle was getting there. My job offered a moving stipend like most corporate companies, but the frugal Midwesterner in me started doing the math. And instead of spending it on flights and movers and waiting for my car and shipping my stuff and having it be broken, I decided to drive the full 23 hours across the country and use the stipend to actually furnish my apartment. It was a long haul, but in my head it made perfect sense. Why pay somebody else to move me when I could white knuckle it myself and end up with a couch at the end of it? So, my drive out west started with the Ohio gas station story. I was driving up towards I 80, cruising off the Pennsylvania Turnpike, which you may know it as that overpriced stretch of pavement. And once I escaped that money pit, I stopped for gas before crossing into Ohio, which, if you don't know, is just a legal form of taxation disguised as a highway. Inside that gas station, I grabbed my usual ranch corn nuts and two buffalo rollers. If you don't know what those are, they are breaded chicken logs. That only makes sense if you grew up in the Midwest. Anyone who hasn't is usually horrified, but the guy behind the counter, he didn't seem to blink. He asked where I was headed, which is something that I've honestly not really heard much of since I've been in Denver. We got to talking about where I came from, and he immediately launched into the Ohio Pennsylvania rivalry, trashing the sports teams, the cities, the laws. But what really stuck with me is how animated he got about bring your own booze restaurants, slot machines in grocery stores, and Pittsburgh folks saying yins, which, if you haven't heard that before, means y'all. The rest of the country says y'all, except for those, maybe some of those New Englanders that say yous. But saying yins, that is real classy Pittsburgh. That conversation reminded me of how far a little Midwest nice can go. People are desperate for somebody to talk to, even for a minute. You walk in with a story, and maybe you make their day a little less ordinary. Like that rhyme there. Now, this is kind of the spot of the video where hopefully in the future there'll be like a cool comment or like or something that I don't know, I'll give you like a shout out or something. Still playing it by ear, but want you guys to be involved. The next part of the drive comes in Illinois, and it was a nice little hotel story. Um, yeah, sorry about that little dialogue. Just getting used to having breaks within the video. Um, Next part of the journey, I checked into a hotel in Joliet, Illinois, after a long day on the road. It was the kind of tired where you just want room key, a shower, silence, maybe some of those sun chips out of the hotel concierge. Instead, I walked to the front desk, and it was an experience that felt like a hostage situation wrapped in customer service. The woman at the counter greeted me, found my reservation, pulled out the key card. It was all going like every other time I've stayed in a hotel. She had it in her hand right there, inches from me, and then froze. She looked at my name, looked back at me, looked back at my name, looked back at me, and lit up like she just solved a mystery. "Oh my gosh," she says. "That's the name of the character my dog's dressed up for as Halloween." And before I could react, she set the key down, didn't hand it over, it was still behind the counter, and then launched into an entire saga of how she spent 3 weeks crafting matching costumes for her dogs so that they could look like that character from Monsters Inc. The one that I happen to share a name with, there's only a few, so figured out. I nodded, smiled, pretended to be fascinated by the logistics of the dog sized fabrics and the emotional journey of a woman who clearly loved Halloween more than oxygen. Meanwhile, my keycard sat on the counter like a prize I was not allowed to win until she finished her TED talk on canine cosplay. Every time I thought the story was over, she found a new chapter. How the neighbors reacted, how the dogs reacted, how the photos turned out, how one dog really embodied the role. I stood there, flabbergasted, luggage in hand, wondering if I was ever going to see the inside of my room, or if this was my new life now. Finally, after what felt like a full-length documentary, she slid the key toward me with the satisfaction of someone who had completed a sacred ritual. "Anyway," she said, "have a great stay." I took the key, walked to the elevator, and realized that Joliet had taught me something I didn't expect. Sometimes the price of a hotel room isn't money. It's listening to a stranger's entire dog costume origin story before you're allowed to sleep. I'm just going to go over this real quick. This is going to be the section of the video where I draw out a random playing card for another project that I'm a part of. If you can figure it out, mad respect. This will be the only time that I'm going to talk about this section otherwise. So, yeah, be ready for a bunch of comments of what is this guy doing. The last trek of the drive out to Colorado, if you don't know, is through Iowa and Nebraska. Iowa's fine. It's always a short little drive through the state, but Nebraska is a real hike. I was probably 3/4 of the way through the state when I decided to stop at a truck stop. This is the kind of place where time feels slower and the fluorescent lights are loud. I hadn't slept much. My brain was operating at a level of exhaustion that made everything a little imaginary. All I wanted was something to eat before getting back on the road. So I wandered into the subway tucked inside the truck stop. I ordered my usual sandwich, nothing fancy. The one I always get when I'm too tired to think, or I guess whenever I go to a Subway since I was 7 years old. Then the guy behind me comes up while I'm starting to dig into the sandwich before I save the other half of the drive home. He ends up ordering the same sandwich. Same bread, same toppings. I was like, alright, whatever, weird coincidence. The next person ordered. Same sandwich, same bread. Left off a couple of the toppings, but if he would have really went for it, he would have ended up with the same sandwich. But then the next. By the fourth person, I was fully convinced I was either hallucinating or trapped in some kind of Nebraska-themed simulation. I was wondering if I ordered the most popular sandwich in the state, or if everybody was just copying the guy in front of them, like some type of Subway conga line. It wasn't until I was back in my car, flabbergasted, but it hit me. Nobody in a Nebraska truck stop late at night is ordering anything exotic. We're all ordering the same thing because everyone orders the same thing at Subway. The Italian BMT, the default, the classic, the sandwich equivalent of a safe bet on a long drive. I talked myself down. I was not witnessing a glitch in the Matrix. I was just watching 4 people in a row who had some class and was ordering the only sandwich anybody orders at a truck stop Subway. It ended up making perfect sense. Out there in the middle of Nebraska, surrounded by diesel engines and open highway, the BMT isn't a sandwich. It's a lifestyle. What stuck with me in that Nebraska truck stop wasn't the sandwich or the sleep deprivation. It was the realization that four strangers in a row ordered the same exact thing that I did. At first, it felt like deja vu, like I was watching the same scene loop over and over and over. But it makes sense. When you strip away the noise, the states we're from, the teams we root for, the accents, the small town quirks, most people are just trying to get through the day in the simplest way possible. On a long drive, in the middle of nowhere, late at night, everyone gravitates towards the same safe, familiar choice. The BMT, it's not just a sandwich. It's a reminder that we're not as different as we think. We all reach for comfort, we all follow routines, we all make the same tired decisions when the road has worn us down. And sometimes, in a fluorescent lit subway at 2 a.m., you'll see that play out in real time. Four strangers, one sandwich, and a quiet reminder that underneath all the surface level differences, people move through the world in surprisingly similar ways. Sometimes it's gas station conversation that sticks with you. Sometimes it's a front desk monologue about dog costumes that you never asked for. Sometimes it's four strangers ordering the same sandwich because comfort is universal. Travel reminds you that the world isn't as divided as it looks from a distance. Travel reminds you that the world isn't divided as it looks from a distance. Up close, we're all just trying to get somewhere, trying to be understood, and trying to make the day a little less ordinary. If you pay attention, those small interactions end up being the stories you remember most. That's going to conclude my three stories for today. Sometimes there'll be two, sometimes there'll be three. Planning to post maybe once a week, maybe twice. These are three of the most boring stories that I could think of, but that means it's only uphill from here. Have a good one, party people. Bye.